Hello, hello. I'm going to give it a minute or two for people to show up. Um, we are also still more in the Super Bowl than I expected. But we're going to get started as people roll in. Give me 1 second. Turn the fan on. If it screws with the visual, please let me know. Sometimes it messes people up. I do see the little shadow over here. Welcome. If anyone has any questions, please throw them in the chat. I'm going to let a couple people, like I said, I'm going to let a couple people get in here, and then I'll get started. Also, there's going to be a lot of Q&A if you're watching at this point. Also, you're going to have to see me eat a little bit because my food was very late because of the Super Bowl. Also. I see Ahmad in here. We may have to adjust because of the Super Bowl, which if we do, it's fine. We can reschedule for 10. What are we thinking on that? So what I'm going to be going over, I'm going to put this at the front since this is going to be uploaded so people can view it later. What I'm going to be going over is what to do at your first protest, what not to do, how to be a good protester, how to be a bad protester, because you need to know what not to do. You know what I mean? So many people tell you what to do, but don't tell you what not to do. And I think that's just as important. We've got a few guests that are going to come through. I'm actually going to send them links in a second. Just so they got them on deck. I'll actually do that right now. Now I got to send that to another person. Bear with me. I hate it when people are live and they use their phone, but I have to text it to this person, so my apologies. If you have any questions, come on over TikTok chat. Thank you, Christian. I can, in theory, I can look at the TikTok chat here, Christian, so maybe I'll do that. Can I? Let's see. What's up, Dragon? Good to see you. Let me see if I can do that. I don't know. I can't. I bet you I can see it from my burner account. So we'll switch accounts. We will switch accounts. Oh, I can. Perfect. Looks a little delayed, but that's all right. It is intentional, Gladiator, just so we have everyone in one spot. I was just checking to make sure that that was the case. But that is intentional. It just makes it too hard to moderate if we don't have everyone in one spot. So what do we think? Should I start monologuing or should we wait a minute? Dragon. That was his name on other platforms for a while. Excuse me. That was his name on other platforms for a while, and then he changed it. I was so thrown when he changed it. I'm like, who is this? I knew his name, but I was like, who is? When did we make this change? No, Gladiator, go for it. I'm going to go over some stuff, but questions are absolutely fine. I think I want to kind of do it as more like a group conversation than just. I don't think a monologue's the way I want to do this. I can, but Photo gave it away. Yeah, for me too. When I first saw him with his other name on the other platforms, I'm keeping it out for your question, Gladiator. By the way, I never eat online, so of course my most serious live, I wind up eating. All right, so how do you find protests? That's a good question. That's also step number one. Like that's step number 0. So perfect spot to start. How do you find a protest? If a protest is not big enough that its existence, see, here's the thing, and then like this may just me. If you've never been to a protest and you're not in that sphere, and a protest is so big that it gets pushed to your news, it's already pretty big. And I feel like there's diminishing returns depending on the topic. Like if it's local, I think there's more diminishing returns. Some people may disagree with me on that. But the only way you're going to find a protest locally is getting involved in your local, like, I don't want to say resistance communities because that's not it, but your local, like, community organization groups. And this is going to sound so weird, but I promise it's true. Food banks, soup kitchens, like your neighborhood free libraries, stuff like that, getting involved there. One is an act of resistance, even though all you're doing is helping your community. And you will find out about stuff in those locations for sure. It sounds counterintuitive, but I promise it is the case. Bear with me. Thank you. Sorry, I'm back. I used to volunteer with a group that helped get like toiletry essentials to homeless people. And the amount of protests I found out that in those spaces was a lot, because the reality is people that are willing to do that actual like unsexy community activism are very community involved. They know. And not everybody is going to be on the front line. Not everyone's going to be in that video footage from a helicopter on the news where there's thousands, if not tens or hundreds of thousands of people in the street. A lot of community resistance is, and this is why it's hard to get people to do it, it's functionally like it's unsexy. I talk about this a lot when people ask me about how to spend their money donating. Like if they want to donate to, like people ask me, I want to donate to a soup kitchen. What product should I donate? And I say money. And they're like, no. When I go to the grocery store, what should I buy? And I'm like, nothing. Give them money. But money isn't sexy to give a food bank. but they get to buy food at wholesale. So if you just give them money, they can buy whatever they're missing, and they can the dollar goes further. Those are the places where you're gonna do. It's spread through word of mouth and online. It's spread through word of mouth and online. But if your presence is not there in the online community, you might struggle to find it. You can also get active in like community outreach online spaces, but nothing, and maybe I'm but nothing to me is as good as your actual like physical in-person local groups where you're helping your community. It's also, how do I say this? Like when you're calling a senator, calling is the most important thing. Now, when you're contacting a senator, calling is the most important thing. Because if you send them an email, they can just look and see 100 subjects and just be like, select, mark is red, moved on. A call's harder to ignore. And by that same logic, actually working in your local community is better than working in online spaces, because online spaces are easy to organize. But if you never leave those online spaces, you're easy to ignore. I found out about the 50501 protest that just recently happened, where there was a protest at every single state capital and DC. I found out about that one online, but then I had to get out in the real world, and that's the only way I was able to have an effect. And for me, I live close to DC, so I said, all right, I'm going to the Maryland one, because no one's going to go to the Maryland one. Because if you're going to the Maryland one, they're going to go, I'm just going to go to DC. So there's like, I don't know if they think like it's bigger or Trump has a chance to see them, but I knew that would be the case. And I knew people that went to DC and said the turnout was pretty good, even if the energy level was a little deflated, but the turnout in Maryland wasn't the best. But again, I had to go out of that online space to find it. Excuse me. Yeah, so finding them that way is going to be the best way. Finding them that way is going to be what works the best for most people. But you can, again, if you are online instead of, or you don't have time to be in your physical spaces a lot, you just got to get involved with like your local, like every single like activist group has a local page, if you are thinking of something like big, like the NAACP, they have local chapters. Those local chapters have pages, and accessing those will also give you answers, if that makes sense. And that's important, it is not always like there's a barrier to entry that is a little bit hard to pass the first time, but once you've passed it, like once you have the routine down, it's really easy. Just like the first time of doing anything. The first protest I went to ever was pre-internet, and I learned about it from a flyer in a clothing store, which obviously is not how we learn about these things anymore. And I will tell you, one of the scariest experiences I had at a protest was showing up to my first protest. Like showing up to my first protest was one of, if not the scariest things that's ever happened. Even scarier than like the police getting involved and the violence they visit upon citizens, just going, because I didn't know anyone and I didn't know what to do and I didn't know where to stand, and I didn't bring a sign because I was like, what do I do with a sign? And I typically don't bring signs. I know a lot of people do. I don't. But that first time I was like, this is really scary. Good to see you, Echo. If you Google like your local like mutual aid groups, they will also most likely have those answers for you. Even what do you do if you literally don't know anyone? Google your local mutual aid group. Google like something as simple as your town name, mutual aid, or your county, mutual aid. If there's protests, you can also Google your town and protest. If you think a protest should be coming, you can just search for that. I have found protests. I have found protests where I'm like, there's got to be a protest for this. There has to be. and it's literally like Donald Trump protest Chicago. And something comes up and goes, he's getting protested on Saturday. Perfect. I now know where to go. Because obviously those groups want to get that information out. What do you do if you don't know anyone when you get there? That's okay. You don't have to know anyone. The buddy system is better, but if you've never been to a protest, you are a support character. You are not the lead. You're not an NPC either, because you're there and you're doing something. But you are not, like, you're not a background character. You're not a day player. Like, you are just a background, like, you're a support character. So you shouldn't be going aggro. You shouldn't be drawing a lot of ire. And the odds in you needing a buddy there is pretty small. Yeah, exactly. Like, once you get there, like, people will talk to you. People will talk to you and you will talk to people. When I just went to a protest and I was just like, I didn't know anyone. I didn't know anyone at the protest I was at. And I just showed up and I was standing there and I was doing what I need to be doing at the protest. People just walked up to me and started talking to me. Even a guy from the press. And he wasn't even talking to me about the protest. A photographer came over and was like, can I ask you some questions? And I was like, sure. And it was all about my tattoos. He was just talking to me. And then he's like, can I take your picture? And I said, no. And he's like, that makes sense. And he was clearly in support of the protest. And then this older woman was like, I've never been to a protest before. And she starts talking to me. And then once people kind of saw where I was at, then some young people were talking to me. And there were other people that didn't want to talk to me at all. And that's just like going anywhere, you know, like if you go to a party and you don't know anyone and you just stand around, someone's going to talk to you. And at a protest, you at least know that everyone's on the same page. There will be counter protesters. I saw a comment about counter protesting, but at most organized protests that are of any size, there will be law enforcement there, and they do try and keep the two sides separate. Typically, sometimes they fail you on that. And if they do, they almost always fail you in favor of fascism. And I'm not trying to dishearten anyone, but I have never once seen the police be like, resistance, have at the fascists. But I've absolutely seen the police go, fascists, have at the resistance. And that's something you got to be prepared for. But again, your first protest, you should be back a little ways. Now, if you're white, that can change really quickly, because sometimes at protests, the front line will see the police coming in and you will hear white people to the front. That's your job. You go up front, because the reality is the police are less likely to harm you. Not unlikely, less likely. And it's also likely to be less severe. Oh, absolutely. They're absolutely way quicker to arrest than fascists. When I was protesting Donald Trump, when he was in town, a guy pushed me. When I leaned back, I grabbed his arm. The police saw this guy push me. I grabbed his arm, not even to beef with him, like to stabilize. Who did the police grab? Me. That was just reality. Did I get arrested? No. But I got pulled aside. I got questioned. They went through my pockets, which is arguably illegal in that situation. But what am I going to do? Which is why I also say never bring a weapon to a protest, because you don't want that smoke. Actually, perfect. One of our guests is here. Let me. Z, I'm going to get you the link you need. There it is. You can click that and I will let you up. Z is a mutual of mine. Very, very accomplished protester. So I'm going to let her give her own speech on who she is. I don't want to speak for her. But Z, if you have any issues with that link, just comment and let me know. You didn't. Perfect. Bam.
I think I'm in.
You are. Let me change the screen. So there you go. Look at that control station you got. Welcome, my friend. Welcome.
All right. I apologize. I had a bit of a lag, and please pardon me. This is my first time actually going live as a guest on Twitch. So I think I've got everything together, and I managed to turn off the extra audio.
It's the same as everywhere else. Don't even worry about it. It's the exact same as everywhere else. Once you're up, at least, it's the exact same.
I made it. Okay. So would you like me to introduce myself?
100%. Because you come at this from a totally different angle than I do, and I'd love to hear you without my interference.
Okay. So my name is Zeba. I have been protesting pretty much every week since October 7th of 2023. I do have experience within the activism scene prior to that when I lived in the US during the Bosnian genocide. One of my favorite questions is what radicalized you? The truth is, I'm brown. I just came out that way. So not being radicalized is kind of not an option. I've also been a disability awareness advocate for a long time. I'm on the autism spectrum, and I have 2 kids with autism as well. All three of my kids are neurodivergent, and I also have chronic illness. So I've been involved in activism of some sort for a heck of a long time. And I was very briefly listening to your conversation earlier about, tattoos and identifiability and where you place yourself in a protest. And, I love having this conversation with people because there's no one right way to protest. The same way that there's no one role that a protester plays. I get a lot of good advice from people to, for example, cover my face, cover up identifying markers. I live stream protests. I'm an organizer. I speak at protests. I drum. My identity is public and has been public for a long time because I've been in various activism scenes and, various public facing roles within my community. So my place in a protest is going to be highly visible, well documented, and quite different than other people's. But I think if I was going to give first-time protesters a bit of advice, it would be don't be shy, because the organizers probably need you. There's something that you're good at. There's something that you're like, oh, I could do that. And you're like, well, nobody's asked me. I'm sure they have it all together. I'm sure they don't need me to do that. For the most part, they're always going to need more people, honestly. As somebody who plays a drum at a protest and has never been trained to play a drum, I always had people tell me like, oh, but I've never been trained to play a drum. It's like, you know how long I've been drumming? They're like, oh, how long have you been drumming? And I'm like, November of 2023. They're like,
an hour.
a minute or two. And the truth is that this idea that everybody has to be an expert or like professionally trained at anything and everything they do in public it's a very capitalist culture one. Like, you can't dance in public unless you're a dancer. You can't show your art unless you're like a professionally trained artist. Like, you have to have been institutionally certified or like, been market worthy in some way before you show up. Just show up.
If I may add a note to that, someone once said to me at a protest when I said I didn't know what to do, they said anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Like, it is better that you bring a sign that when you hold it up, it's folding over because you didn't put the structure right than not bring a sign. It's better that and one thing that you and I have in common is in our protesting areas, we're known. Like, I would assume every single cop and counter protester in the area knows you. Like they know they know at least know of you.
They can hear me. They do. They can hear the drums for sure. So yeah.
Like when you look like this, there's no, like, I can hide this if I'm completely wrapped, but it's got to be up to here, and it's got to be gloves, and it's got to be, and I got to be covering my face because I like. Also, I'm kind of a brick. I'm short and fat, so I also stand out that way. But I know my role is not to hide, and I don't have anonymity, so I don't even try to. Like, if there's any video gamers in here, I know my job is to tank. I know my job is to go aggro. And when somebody is being mean to a drummer, or someone is being mean to a tiny little first-time protester that does not yet have like the intestinal fortitude to stand up, that's where I'm like, that's my job. And there's movement in there.
Oh, that's a hugely important thing. The first time that I was in DC for a protest, which is for arresting Netanyahu, the first time that he came to visit, I was making my way to the stage area to arrange myself with the other percussionists while I was there.
Okay.
And my first experience of seeing Jacob Berger IRL, and Jacob Berger is a very famous pro-Palestinian advocate from New York, very big, very Jewish, very loud, is him literally nose to nose with the Zionist counter-protester, backing this man down with nothing but the power of his face and his profanity. It was majestic.
And to the viewers, both live and who are going to see this on YouTube later, if you think you can't do that, it's okay. You don't need to. I might have had someone in a red hat take a swing on me, and I might have swung back and been more successful. And when I ran this old, when I say old, I mean 55 to 60, so not ancient, but old for being at a protest, white woman that looked like she did not belong. When I was running, and one of my friends was actually filming, because my friend had seen the altercation and started filming to prove that I wasn't starting it, and just followed me. And we deleted the video after I didn't get caught, but the police came running over, and this woman started white woman tears and went, "That guy almost ran me over. He went that way." And I had gone this way. And which way did the police go? They just through the crowd. And
I love it.
And my buddy walked up to her and went, "Are you okay?" And she's like, "I've been doing this for years, baby. I'm fine." Like, but that was the power that only an older, affluent-looking white woman had. If I cried, no cops are going to give a shit. If you cried, no cops are going to give a shit. But that old, affluent-looking white woman started crying and said, "He almost ran me over. He went that way," and it saved my butt. Like Oliver said.
I'm so jealous. I am so jealous. I have been waiting for somebody to FAFO for such a long time. The opportunity has yet to present itself. I'm vicariously living through that moment, which must have been tremendously satisfying.
It was only satisfying for me when I got back, because I ran like hell was chasing me, because it was. And I had no idea that it was chasing me in the wrong direction. Now, thankfully, the way I was dressed let everyone at the protest know that I was one of theirs. So they parted like the Red Sea for me to just... But I got far. And I didn't have, I had my phone on me, because I will also bring phones, and I want to talk to you about that in a second. But my phone was buried and in a lead bag to try and reduce stuff and powered down. So by the time I got it out, I had 6 texts from my buddy going, "You're good. You can come back. It's okay." And when I got back, I'm like, "What? How did they not come?" And they're like, and he told me, and I walked up to this woman. I'm like, "Can I give you a hug?" And she was like, "Absolutely. But I don't know why you're hugging me." I was like, there we go. Wonderful. I don't know why I'm hugging you either. I'm just full of emotion right now.
No idea. Just a spontaneous spur of the moment thing. I want to say hello to Oliver, who apparently knows that I have drumsticks. Sometimes people's Twitch names don't line up to your TikTok name, so I apologize if I'm missing who you are. But yes, I do have drumsticks, and they double as soup from my family. They're just drumsticks. That's all. It's just soup from my family.
I, as someone who looks like this, can wear a handful of rings. Nobody cares. I want to actually, since phones came up, I want to get your opinion on this. I'm of the opinion that phones at protests have a limited space. Like, if you're worried about being found out and you're not on any lists yet, leave them at home. And definitely don't like take a bunch of pictures of people's faces or like be scrolling and not. But there is a space for people to record. Like you wear a vest and record, right?
I just recently got one. Prior to that, I have tried to alternate between using a tripod and propping the phone up somewhere because, again, I need my hands for drumming and we're often marching. But yeah, I will sometimes stream protests. I was streaming one earlier today from the Margaret Hunt Hill Bridge in DFW. I do take my phone with me, but I'm always very careful to provide crowd shots or flag shots or a view of the stage, because there is an assumption that if you're on a stage with your face uncovered, you understand that you're putting yourself in a public space. I think it's important when discussing the phone thing to determine whether or not you are a public protest attender or a non-public protest attender. If you don't want to be seen there publicly for work reasons, for social reasons, for some sort of backlash that you're expecting, don't bring your phone. If you don't want people there, if you don't want to be spotted, cover your face, cover your identifying markers. If you don't want people to know that you're there, then don't be traceable. If you're a public hype man for protests and you are functionally a propagandist of the revolution, bring your phone, because those are the tools of our trade. So yeah, but not pointing it towards people's faces is a really big one, because that's very op behavior. Yeah, don't do that.
Also, if someone has a really cool sign and you want a photo, what I do is I say, can I take a picture of your sign? And I make it very clear that my camera is framing on them, like holding the sign. It's not like I'm not, because I have absolutely had people that were 100% undercover cops go, can I take a picture of your sign? And I go, sure. And I hold it right in front of my face. Go right ahead. I one time looked at a guy and went, absolutely, officer.
I love how they think they're so incognito. I love how they have this uniform. They're always wearing jeans and like they're always wearing their boots. They have a backwards hat or a baseball cap to cover the communication thingy in their ear. You can see the imprint of their vest underneath of their shirt. They'll wear a short sleeve button down open around it to hide the imprint. They're so recognizable. And I was having this conversation with a comrade of mine from yesterday's protest about the group of police that we were able to spot from a distance. Like, oh, the protest is over there. Why? Because there's a handful of white guys dressed like middle-aged men with thick necks. Like they have this look to them.
Yep.
And I really wonder what sort of specific training they're up to in the gym, where normally in order to have a neck that big, the rest of you is proportionately swollen in some way. But they seem to be like neglecting arm day and leg day and just going for whatever it is that makes it look like your head and neck are a continuous unit.
So two other things that will let you spot cops. One, sometimes, not always, you'll notice that there's like 3 or like 4 people with like a red sweatband or a green sweatband, like an armband, because they can notice each other that way. And
Oh,
newer cops, especially when they start getting stressed, they will instinctively grab their vest. They will stand and they will do this because they're holding. If you see someone like stand like this,
uh-huh.
T-Rex arms ought to die. Grabbing their vest, that's a cop every time.
That is a new one. I will keep that in mind.
And foolish protesters that know what's up are never going to care that you're covering your face.
Yeah,
Never,
absolutely.
ever going to care.
It's such a normal part of being there that like I have comrades that I can only recognize if their face is covered. If they uncovered, I'd be like, who are you? I know the outline of your face and your voice. I know your silhouette, but if they took that off, I wouldn't know them at all. You have another one in there.
It is definitely like whenever people have commented on me wearing masks, I know something's up. Like when COVID was still pretty prevalent and we were all wearing masks, one guy twice in the span of like 4 minutes said, "Can you take your mask off? I can't hear you." And I was like, "No." And I'm like, "Are you a cop or are you a Nazi?" And he was like, "What?" I'm like, you're wearing a mask, but it's under your nose, so it's useless. I'm like, and you just told me to take mine off. And I'm like, also, I know not what I said to him, but I know I'm a loud motherfucker. Like I'm loud. My mask is not drowning me out. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, what do you like? No, I'm not taking my mask off. See, Oliver holds his vest like that too. It doesn't have to be a bulletproof vest. It can be a high vis vest. Once people are used to wearing them, they'll start doing this to rest their arms. It's so clear. And yes, the backwards hat, even walking into the sun, especially if it's backwards hat, no sunglasses walking into the sun, 100% a cop every time.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah. The bad faith actors, they're kind of funny too, actually. And it would be more amusing if they did their homework better. I was in Chicago for the DNC, the March on the DNC, and I drum with ear protectors on, and I can hear the chanter, but I can't always hear what the crowd is doing. My hearing isn't like 100% when I'm wearing them, and I heard a change in the cadence of the march where I'm like, this is strange. What is this? I don't know this chant. So I took off my ear protector to listen, and it's this chant, and it goes up, 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 up. I'm like, I haven't heard that one before. And apparently that was part of their security protocol, is that when they found an up, they crowd mic'd up until security was able to come and locate this person who had been filming people's faces, like at point blank range, and was wearing a kufiya in the worst way I have ever seen in my entire life. And the internet is free. If you type in kufiya tutorial, you'll be totally spoiled for choice. But this person, I don't have one with me, but kufiya is a square. You fold it into a triangle, right? You got this nice triangle. If you want to wear it with only your eyes showing, oh, good, you've gone to get one. I'm glad. If you want to wear it with only your eyes showing, you fold it twice. So you end up with a smaller triangle. And then you tie that. Thank you. Here we go. So
just as an example, what the fold we're talking here is,
yes,
this is my smaller one. It'll just be easier to show on camera.
Mm-hmm.
So you got your corners.
Mm-hmm.
So you got your triangle. This is good for around the neck.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't wear one of these around your neck at the protest personally. I don't wear anything around my neck at a protest. Yeah, well, you have a different reason. But for the face, and when it's larger than this, you can tie it. Because the real ones are large.
Right. So what that person had done is he had done 3 folds, not 2. So fold that twice.
I'm trying to think of if I can even fit that around my big melon head, for the record.
Well,
This
that's part of the wonder of it all.
This is so
Okay,
thick.
yes, you got to fold it 3 times, right?
I did. Yeah. Oh, I did.
Okay. So now tie it across your face in the most uncomfortable, pointless, and suffocating
Yeah,
manner
there's no
you
way
can.
to tie this. Also, it's so thick over my mouth.
That's how they had it tied. That's how they had it tied. I've never seen anyone attempt to do that with a kufiya in my entire life.
I've tied this tiny one
fun.
around my face like this many times.
Yes, same, but that's a bandana. So
yeah,
the cops and bad faith actors are really just not as slick as they think.
They're not. And also, like, it's interesting because the left has tons of propaganda about how the right is all like dumb yokels. But we still know they got some brains in them, but they all think the left is like comically dumb. Like, there's no way we're going to notice. They don't do any research. They don't.
I don't think that assumption is baseless. And I'm going to say this without being, I'm going to try and say this without being offensive to left and right in general, as well as center. The American population buys such garbage on a regular basis. It's like Alice in Wonderland, where you have to believe 5 impossible things a day, to get into the habit of it. Americans are so conditioned to accept nonsensical things that it's not that crazy to assume that everyone is really dumb. It's not that crazy. Also, when you consider the presence of alternative facts, the right thinks the left is so dumb they'll literally believe anything that's on the internet, and the left watches the right and thinks, wow, they are so dumb they'll believe anything on the internet, when Americans in general are deliberately misinformed, and kind of, unless you yourself work through it and choose to kind of break it out of the matrix, it's not that wild of an assumption. That's all I'm saying.
Also, most Americans do not think we are propagandized. like I had someone in my live the other night who kind of offhandedly said that. I'm like, there is no country on earth better at propaganda than the US, except for maybe Israel. And they were like, yeah. I'm like, do you think they don't point that inward? Do you trust our government not to point that inward? And like, it wasn't a light bulb moment. I feel like it was a dimmer switch where they were just like, I'm like, yeah, I promise you, we're propagandized.
Not only is America the king of propaganda internally, they are externally as well. I mean, we know that a lot of Hollywood works with, the DOD and, with furthering American policy goals and, manufacturing the consent for specific conflicts and invasions, and then manufacturing remorse for it later, and kind of like Hollywood washing the sins of America so we can feel better about ourselves. Like the way that we have all these, heart-wrenching films about Vietnam veterans. We focus on the trauma and, the suffering of the Americans that we sent over to die and massacre people at the same time. Like we'll kind of hallmark wash, our own sins. But it also works overseas. Hollywood, again, is consumed globally. As odd as this sounds, like I cannot go to a standard American theater and watch an Indian movie, but you can go to India and watch an American movie in any theater. So the rest of the world also consumes American propaganda to the extent that I've lived in Pakistan for about 8 years. I've lived overseas for a long time. I've lived in the U.S. only slightly longer than I have out of the U.S. And one of the first things that my cousins asked me when I went back as an adult in Pakistan, they're like, "Isn't living in America scary?" I was like, "What? Why would it be scary?" They're like, "Because of all the black people." And I was like, "Excuse me? What's the problem?" They're like, "Well, listen, they're like criminals, they're thugs, they're the gangsters. Like all of the movies show it. Why would they show it if it wasn't true?" And I was like, "It works. The manufacturing of consent against people of color and their intrinsic criminality is bought in other countries as well. America's so good at it."
I will continue to say this. If anyone in America does not think that Hollywood is a propaganda arm of the U.S. government, I would like to point out Top Gun 2, also known as Recruitment is Down, the movie.
Independence Day. Independence Day was literally funded. Was it the Air Force?
I think so, yeah.
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 And what a wild thing that the whole world should get behind July the 4th as the global Independence Day. Like how absurd if you live overseas and the fact that America has an Independence Day when it's actually just like rebranding. It's like same product, new line. We're just British colonialism, but we broke off from that. We rebelled we broke off from the main business basically. Oliver, I am in the South. Ooh, Foolish had a great question. Foolish says,
I was letting you finish your thought, and I was going to ask you your opinion on that.
Yeah, as a privileged white woman, how do I make sure that people around me who don't necessarily look like me are safe? So that's going to depend on where you are or not. I'm going to talk about green bearding as a social phenomenon. So imagine if people had beards and they were green and it was very visible. And if you saw somebody else with a green beard in public, you're like, "Oh my God, you have a green beard. I have a green beard too." And then you would be friends and you would know that you have found one of your people because you have, visual confirmation that we're together. This is why kufiyas are important. This is why, buttons and pins and flags and bracelets are important. As much as people laughed about, the Democratic white women wanting to wear blue bracelets to let people know that they didn't vote for Trump, wearing visual signifiers of a social or political position is actually important. It actually is, even though it doesn't absolve you for participating in white supremacy in other forms. So, I mean, the idea that the Democrat women should just go around wearing blue bracelets and that be enough to make them one of the good ones, like that's laughable. But visually identifiable social signifiers are wonderful because then somebody doesn't have to wonder. They just know. And apart from that, just ask. That's it. You don't have to try and mind read. If you are at a protest wearing a signifier or holding a sign, you're automatically safe. If you're not at a protest, you're not wearing a sign, you're not waving a sign, then wearing some small visual signifier is one way for people to know that you're not a Zionazi. White trash leftist. I'm in Texas, y'all. There you go, Oliver. You have a pride flag that you can wear around your neck like a cape. Social signifiers are important.
I will say this, and I make fun of this on my channel a lot. I know that genetics kind of put me in a Republican uniform, and it's just real. It's just real. Hey, buddy, you want to be involved? When
septum piercing for sure.
when people see me out in public and they see short, fat, gray face, a lot of times is when I am walking up to a protest, I will watch people go, "It's going to be good for us or bad for us. It's going to be good for us or bad for us." And then they see my fuck racism shirt or one of these around my neck or any of the other things that I have, and you see them go, oh. If anyone knows lace code, my boots have blue and yellow laces. Like, there are things I wear to let people know. And
I know yellow. What's blue?
So it depends on your region. Blue is either anti-police or that you've done serious physical harm to a policeman.
These are both good. So it's good regardless of the region.
Like,
I will be honest that I would not assume that you are Republican because you have ear gauges.
that interestingly, people on the left say that this and these are a signifier that I'm on the left, and people on the right say that this and these are a signifier that I'm on the right. Nobody thinks I'm a centrist.
I've never seen a counter protester or one of those maggots who show up at our protest. I have never seen a counter protester with gauges in my life. I have never seen
I don't see a lot of conservatives with gauges either, but I mean, they may just be seeing what they want to see, but oh yeah, like
maybe that's a left-handed compliment. Maybe they think you're cool and they wish you were one of them.
But I also get it, like, in the grocery store. Like, I make fun of it that I'll be doing my groceries with my wife, doing normal family errands, and I'll see like the Make America Great Again hat and the American flag shirt, and they'll be seeing me in the aisles, and I'm like, ugh. And sure enough, they'll just come walking down and look at me and be like, hell yeah, man. Sick tats. I'm like, you're the enemy. Also, by the way, something I want to say about signifiers, they are both a useful tool to tell people things, and they're a useful tool to change things. I have a hat that looks like a military hat, and it literally says retired drug dealer in bold letters. I get thanked for my service every time I wear it because nobody is paying attention to everything. And they're grabbing little clues. One of my buddies regularly protests in high cuffed pants that look like he's ready for a flood and a brightly colored polo. And if shit goes down, he uncuffs his pants and throws away the polo, and he's got a neutral colored shirt on. Nothing changes. He does nothing to his face. But when someone says, who just came through here, they go, red polo shirt, and he always wears like a bright red or orange or like very vibrant, and he can ditch that in 10 seconds. And that's what the brain sees.
Yeah.
It is, those are things you can absolutely use. If traveling in and out of a protest alone, a signifier that you can hide can help 100%. One thing I want to say about that, I'm very against backpacks at protests. So
same.
You got to be able to tuck it into your hoodie or your pocket, or
you also need to be able to see your stuff. Like if you're in a crush of people and you're being jostled around, somebody can reach into your bag. We had somebody that had an op put certain illegal herbal things in their bag without their consent, without their knowledge, because they were wearing a backpack and somebody slipped it in there.
Also, backpacks are functionally those kid leashes you see at concerts, but for the cops to grab you.
Yes. Yes. Just not a good idea.
What's the dumbest thing you could accidentally do? So I have an answer on this, and it's a very broad answer. The dumbest thing you could do is trust anything a police officer says, because they are legally allowed to lie to you. I one time had a cop say to me, I know you did it. And I just went, cool, lawyer. And he's like, I know you did it. And like, I was in for questioning. It's not like he's saying it to me on the street. Like, I'm down at the station. You did it, lawyer. I'm invoking my right to remain silent, lawyer. And they're like, yeah, we're getting them. So yeah, like, we know you did it. Your friend's in the next room. And I'm like, you're actually breaking the law by continuing to question me right now, because I said I want a lawyer and I'm not talking to you. But yeah, Your friend told us you did it. So if you don't give us something on your friend, you're going to be in big trouble. And I was like, I guess I'm going to be in big trouble then. I'd like a lawyer and I'm revoking my right to remain silent. They didn't even have my friend. He got away. And they were telling me he's next door, like in the next room, snitching on you right now. And I'm like, wonderful. Great. I'm not saying shit. And when the public defender got there, they were like, what have you said so far? And I'm like, ask them. And he's like, what have I said so far? And they're like, nothing. And they're like, great, he's leaving. Like, and if I'd said, like, if I'd given in at all, like, they will bait you. They will try and trick you. Also, unless you are El Chapo, and I mean the level of severity very sincerely, unless you are El Chapo, any deal that they say, this deal only works if you take it right now, they're lying. They're lying. Unless time is of the essence where someone is fleeing the country or burning evidence, no deal is only good right now. You can wait till your lawyer gets there.
Urgency, artificial urgency is a great sales tactic.
Yeah.
This on sale now, buy it now, limited quantities, limited stocks. My response to that question about, the dumbest thing that you could do that puts others at risk is actually to be a hot-headed SOB and endanger the people around you. Again, having been to a lot of protests and protested and marched with a lot of people, there is a certain type of person that is looking for a fight. I may or may not be included in that group, but I'm more mature about it and I don't go picking them. I'm busy drumming. But they will deliberately antagonize law enforcement. They will deliberately antagonize counter protesters. And they're like, what? I'm young. Let him try. I got these fists, these hands are rated E for everybody. Okay, cool, bro. Do you understand that if they can't catch you because you run so fast that they're going to attack that guy? If they can't get you, they're going to get that guy. Like I was with somebody in DC who insisted on getting in the police officers' faces where it's like, I'm your ride home. If you don't stop, I'm leaving without you. It's like, I can run faster than they can. Well, they can't catch you, so they're going to tackle me.
Also, like typically the people that are doing that, like, and again, there's a place for someone going aggro. I'm not saying I never do it. But if you are not skilled and trained like in the field on this, don't do it. Because if someone that looks like me goes aggro, and it's normally people that look like me that do it, the worst of the violence is not going to be visited on people that look like you. It's visited on our black and brown siblings at the protest. That's just reality. And you incentivize, I actually get a lot of pushback on this. Police already visit violence on protesters. They just do. It's a crime, but they get away with it. But they visit way more violence on a riot, and it only takes one rioter for them to declare a riot.
Yes. They're literally just looking for an excuse.
I have absolutely yoked up one of my allies and been like, nope, because like you're coming over here and you're coming over here awake or you're coming over here asleep, but you're coming over here. This is not happening. And I've watched cops laugh while the light was fading from someone's eyes as I'm like, you're coming over here. Like, you are not, like the person that's ready to soup for their family. No. The people that are making the call on escalating are not you. Like unless you're like at like that, like master's level protester, you are not escalating.
Yeah. I will also say that there absolutely is a place for direct action, but direct actions are usually planned. When you see people having these mass arrests, they know who's getting arrested. The organizers have had this conversation the night before. This person has given their car keys to someone who'll drive the car so the car doesn't get towed and impounded. This person has medications. That guy is already at the jail for jail support. Like, even though these things do happen and there's absolutely a role to play in non-compliance, in illegality, there is a role to play in that in the movement. If it wasn't handed to you, don't take it upon yourself.
It's never random. Like All of
Yes.
those videos you see where somebody on the left just somehow breaks through all of the lines and sprints over and jumps up and grabs that flag from the enemy and then disappears back into the good guys. Literally 15 people collaborated on that plan. We're going to push here. We're going to push there. You, sometimes me, fat boy, you're going to be right here. So when the cops come, you can stand in their way and go, oh, excuse me. Like it is like a football play. It is not random. Very, very rarely does that happen where one person takes it upon themselves and it works well.
Yep. Hold on. Lana, or is it Lana or Iana? I did a bum.
Lana the lizard.
Lana the lizard, sorry. I did a bum bag under the hoodie was my solution also when planning a protest. Oh, like a fanny pack. Okay. Don't say you're going to do anything about it. Yeah, I mean, don't incriminate yourself. That's ridiculous.
Anything you say can and will be used against you.
Oh, absolutely. As will any weapon. Never. I know you mentioned this earlier, but again, never, ever, ever, ever take a weapon to a protest. If any weapon or anywhere, never take a weapon that you are not trained to use. It will be used against you, because if you don't know what you're doing with it, chances are, bad guy has used it much better and more often than you have, and it becomes a liability, especially in protests.
Yeah. I had someone in a live stream I was doing where they said, should I bring a knife? And I said, if you bring a knife, you know what it's going to do? They were like, what? I'm like, it's going to get you arrested or it's going to get you dead.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like, how do you know? I'm like, because you asked me, should I bring a knife? You're not confident in bringing a knife, which means you've never brought a knife, which means it is a liability for you legally and functionally, like your mortality. And she was like, yeah, I'm like, have you ever used one on a person? And she was like, oh God, no. I'm like, then why would you bring one? Like, I'm like, and I'm like, what's the worst that's going to happen? And she went, I'm going to get beat up. And I was like, great. You know what happens if you get beat up and you stab that person? You still get beat up and you go to prison. Like, it's not just take the getting beat up. Unless you're worried about literal death, don't bring that shit. And if you don't know how to use it and you're worried about death, still don't bring it. It's not worth it.
Yeah, the charges that you can get slapped with when a weapon is involved greatly, exponentially increase. The amount of legal danger that it puts you in alone, it is highly significant. Now, I do know people who carry at protests. I mean, this is Texas, but they're all trained. They're highly trained. They're usually part of our security detail, because organizers have security details. Like, there is an entire security crew that does this job. And the biggest skill that they're looking for is actually de-escalation. That is the number one skill that the security teams look for. It's not like, oh, I've taken boxing, I could punch people, put me on security, or, I know how to use this knife, put me on security. No. If you're looking for a fight, you're the last person that they should put on security. They put the chillest, most laid back, like you'd think that they were stoners, but they're not. That's just their personality is so zen, because they're just there to observe and go through this logically and the most calm, non-dangerous manner possible. They're amazing people.
I meant to message you about this earlier today and I forgot, so I'm going to pitch it to you here. I was kind of thinking about, if you're all right with it, going through how I go to a protest and then you saying, I don't do that, I do that, I think that's a bad idea, to kind of have two perspectives. Are you game for that?
Yeah, absolutely. But you have to do that for me too.
That's fine. That's absolutely fine. Like 100%. But, and we protest in different areas of the country. We have different backgrounds. We look different. Like, you and I are going to approach it different. And I thought it would be helpful to like the variance in the audience. So
yeah, that sounds like fun.
When I go to a protest, and again, like I know what I look like. I know how well I'm known by law enforcement in my area. I don't talk to anybody. I don't coordinate with anyone. I don't meet with the team. I don't do any of that stuff. Now, I know you obviously do, because you're more involved in organization, and I don't, because I know that me being involved in that can be a liability to those organizers. And some of those organizers, when I get there, they're like, I know that guy. I know him. He's here all the time. But I don't want their phone numbers. I don't want, and I go super light in my pockets. I'll typically drive near the site and then either walk in, or depending on how far near is, I'll take a ride share or a train or a bus, but I drive near. And why I do that, I'll get to when I'm leaving the protest in this mental exercise. All I have on me, car key, ID, one, or if it's the weekend, 2 nights worth of the meds I absolutely have to have, and a small thing of water. That's it. I don't have anything else. I don't bring my wallet. I don't bring my this. I don't bring, I give this advice to people that shouldn't bring their phones. Also that their forearms don't look like this. Write a phone number where it can't be seen and jumble your last 4 numbers. Because if the police see a number on your arm, they're calling it. They're calling it and being like, hey, we got Nick and here's what he did. And we need questions. Like, now, once you call that person, the police will know who you called, but they don't know that number. And if you jumble the last 4, you're most likely to not, like, for them not to figure it out, you know? And if they can figure it out because they have access to your call logs, you're already pretty much doomed. So, but like, I'll write a friend's phone number on my arm. And if I know the area code, I don't even put the area code. I just put like the prefix, which they can figure out the area code on with some effort. And then I jumble the last 4 in a way I'll remember. And if I get scooped, when I get to make my one phone call, I'm like, all right, that's 555. Like, but knock on wood, that's not going to happen. And when I leave, the reason that I take my car to where, like, to near, but not directly there, is if somebody follows me, I want that, like, if they follow me, they're going to see me get on public transit or in an Uber or whatever I did to get to where I was going. And then I'm going to take my car the rest of the way out. It's much harder to follow someone. Like, if you piss off like the right fascist, they will try and follow you. And if you break your trip home, it is way easier to spot someone following you. Because if you see someone following you on the train or a car behind your Uber and then you get in your car and you're going, it's like, I'm going.
That is very smart. I actually had not considered that. I also travel very light. I have 2 snare drums, 6 backup sticks, 5 fair drums, 3 darbukas, an Aztec death whistle, a cart, backup water, a battery, 2 phone charging cables.
I travel light. Here's my van full of stuff.
And that's just in my cart, because I am a traveling percussion section. So so there's how I travel when I'm not an entire percussion section, because I maintain a library of instruments and I take the instruments with me. The organizers know when I'm showing up and there are people waiting for those instruments. When I travel that way, I park as close as humanly possible because it's a lot of stuff to move and it's very heavy. I'll be very honest. I'm not concerned about people following me to my car, and I'm not concerned about people connecting my car to me. My car has a really big wrap on the side of it. This is Free Palestine. I'm very conspicuous everywhere I go. I also carry, and these fists are rated E for everyone. That may not be a good idea, but I'm not that concerned about being followed. I don't have a phone number written down anywhere. I have it memorized, so it's written in my brain.
Even better.
If I was going to write a number, it would actually be for the National Lawyers Guild. So when I travel as a whole percussion section, it's very different than how I travel. Like, for example, if I'm in DC for a protest, where the only drum I take is my own. And then the only thing I carry will be my driver's license and about $10 with me in case I needed coffee or need to buy water to be able to use a restroom somewhere or do something. or that's literally all I will carry with me.
Not having your credit card and having cash is key, because they will prove you were where you were with that credit card.
Yes. Yeah. So that I understand traveling light because of that. There is an additional thing that I do. So before I explain this additional thing, I'm going to explain how we classify protests. We use a very simple green, yellow, red. Green means bring your kids, bring your grandma. It's going to be a party. We're not expecting any violence, danger, likelihood of arrest at all. An overwhelming majority of protests are entirely green, unless you insist on getting in the police's face or pushing up against their lines. Like, you can make it yellow if you want to, but this protest is a green action. We're not really expecting anything that way.
Even living as close as I do to DC, I would say that it's 80% green in DC.
Yeah.
DC does draw like an extra concentration of counter protesters, but even there, it's pretty safe.
Yeah. I've actually never been. I think the yellowest action I've ever done has been outside of the factory that makes the MK-180s and Blue 109 bunker bombs here in Texas. We periodically go hang out with them and protest in front of their facility. That's the yellowest thing we've ever done, and it's never been yellow. So this classification is important. And red means this is a direct action. Assume you'll be arrested, plan for it. I don't do those. I'm a single mom. I have 3 kids. I don't do red actions. The reason why I clarified between whether or not an action is green or yellow then explains, if I'm going somewhere that I think could be yellow, I will give a person I trust my legal name and my date of birth. And the reason for this is that's the information that you need when you call police stations to ask if this person is there at that station. So this information, just legal name and date of birth, is what you need to give to the National Lawyers Guild, because then the National Lawyers Guild can call the police station and see if you're there, and can then show up and represent you or help you or provide, jail support or bail support, depending on what state you're in. Like, that's the only difference. Like, if I'm going somewhere that could be yellow, somebody that I trust will have my legal name and my date of birth. But apart from that, yeah, I have. Oliver says they're trained to carry a pew-pew professionally and still wouldn't take it to protests because it's not their place to bring it. I would only bring a first aid kit for people who get Band-Aids. I always have Band-Aids. You'd be surprised with the drumming blisters. My hands are very carpentry.
Also, if they zip tie cuff you, somehow when they unzip tie you, they almost always manage to cut you.
Yes. Yeah. It's
somehow
amazing.
With all of those special first responder safety knives, they still manage to cut you.
It's wonderful. Now, fortunately, I've never been zip tied. I would argue that my biggest protest skill is not getting arrested, because perhaps I'm very autistic about this, but I consider arrestability purely a logical sort of evaluation. That they can't arrest you if they can't reach you. If you're nowhere near where the police are, you're not going to get arrested. Full stop. Actually, I have been to a red. I apologize. Biden was in town fundraising with the Zionist group, and the action was in a residential neighborhood. So we were on, I've been to 2 of them, sorry. The other one was a real estate sale for stolen property in the West Bank. And that one, somebody tried to run up onto us and hit us as we were standing on the curb. But yeah, those are the places where you give people your name and date of birth.
I have people that know where I go. So if I don't show up at home on time, they just call. They're like, do you have him? Also, like, yeah, 100%. And that is the difference between support main and tank main. Like, I made a video where I was talking about you don't have to be a social justice warrior. Some people are social justice bards. Like some people are social justice lawyers and bankers.
I love that. I love the bard analogy. I was talking to another activist about this recently, where we were talking about D&D. I've only played once or twice. I'm not very good at it. I have children. I'm busy. I like it.
It's in the cultural zeitgeist. The terms have made it to your brain.
Yeah. But we were talking about the role of vicious mockery in fighting fascism, because vicious mockery is what's needed to dispel the aura of fear. And they have done like studies on this, on the role of humor and satire in successfully dismantling fascism, because fascism, depends upon fear in order to maintain compliance. Fascists never outnumber the people that they're holding in place. They rely on intimidation. And humor is so important to be able to dispel fear and be like, lol, no.
So I get scooped up more. I do get scooped up more than you because I go to the front. And again, I am a tank main. And also, I have no kids and I'm self-employed. So if something happens, I'm okay. And I was talking about this earlier. I don't know if you were in here when I said this. Sometimes you hear a call, white people to the front.
Yes.
My ass is, I'm there. I am there. But
that's the best possible use of male white privilege. Stellar.
In response to the vicious mockery anecdote, when I was at the 50501 protest that just happened, we were at the Capitol in my state, and there was not a huge turnout because we're close enough to DC that a lot of people went to DC. And this truck of dudes just kept coming by, and they'd rev their engine right next to us. Like they'd slow down, rev, and scream and yell obscenities. And they did it once, and I was like, whatever. And then they did it a second time, and I was like, I took my hoodie off, and I folded my kufi up, and someone's like, what are you doing? I'm like, I got this. They're going to be back. And they're like, they're going to beat your ass. I'm like, well, there's 3 of them. So if it comes to that, I'm going to get my ass beat. But no, I won't. And when I saw them coming, I just yanked my shirt off and started slapping my fat belly and yelling at them. They never came back. Nothing. Did not come back. And I was like, I'm a big tough man in my gas guzzling truck. Did not come back. Because as soon as they know you do not give a shit about how tough they are, they fold.
That's absolutely brilliant. I love that so much. We were having this conversation in a group recently where we had a very big action in DFW last week, and it got yellow in some places because it was a decentralized, spontaneous protest. There were no organizers. There was no security. The march almost got kettled simply because there was nobody leading it, and they were heading right up the bridge where people were kettled in the George Floyd protests in that incident. So they were walking right up that bridge, which was a bad idea. But there was we have a nice man. His name is Xavier. He lives in Houston. He drives up for every protest. It's a 4-hour drive. He drives up from Houston every single time, all by his lonesome with his big American flag. He has a new flag now. It says mass deportations now. He shows up all by his dedicated self. And we know his name because he's also the guy who showed up outside of our mosque and pepper sprayed somebody. So we have a legal report on him. The people there surrounded him and they started chanting Que Orona, which means, oh, he wants to cry. He actually started crying. He actually started crying and left. And it took the wind all the way out of his sails. Mockery is so important and so powerful. It's so powerful.
One of the first protests where I was in the front, I saw a guy do this. He was face to face with and he was my age, and he was face to face with a much, much older opponent. And every time the opponent yelled at him, just the top of his lungs, he went, bah, 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 bah. As soon as the guy stopped, he went. And as soon as the guy started again, bah, 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 like so loud. And like this dude is like this, and this kid is like this. And I'm like, he's going to get his ass beat. He's going to get his ass beat. And afterwards, I'm like, dude, how are you not scared? And he was a little bit older than me. He goes, they're never that tough. I was like,
Yeah.
you know, so actually,
Brilliant.
I want to ask you this question. I'll actually, if you don't mind leading on this one, I'd like you to. One of the things, because I want to make this video for people who've never attended protests. What do you think, like in the terms of like your like green going to yellow, what are the things you see where you can go, that is going to cause the shift to yellow or potentially worse?
So the first one is people slapping stickers on or vandalizing police cars. The police will park their cars at the side of a march, and then they'll get out of their cars to do crowd control. And of course, there's a lot of people moving around it. And when that happens, the police get irritated, and the police are human. And when you tick them off, they get more trigger happy and antsy. Then they look for somebody to arrest. So when people start messing with police cars, stay away from that, because the police don't care who they catch. They just want to reach out and grab somebody. It doesn't matter. The other thing is the what we call the shabab, the young men. If a bunch of shabab start getting into the face of the police officers and screaming in their faces, move along, because you can't stop them from doing it. They want to do it. The best case scenario is if they don't stop and the police start to lay hands on people, you're not reachable. So another thing is when the march kind of creates like an eddy or a whirlpool, like there's like a branch that's stuck in a stream, where if there's an incident and you hear people that are yelling, whether it's at a counter protester, whether it's people yelling at the police, whether it's a bystander who's yelling at the crowd, they're not a counter protester. They didn't show up for that, but they're just mad and they want to scream at you. They'll start to be an eddy in the march. There'll be a slowdown. And people will stop to watch this happening. It's like protest rubbernecking. That's a yellow zone. Move along. If you're not there to get caught up in a whirlpool, then keep going. The things that typically get people arrested casually, unplannedly, not deliberately arrested, are the things that get the police's attention. The other things that happen are when police will target a leader, for example. That's entirely different. There'll be a different formation. They'll pick out somebody specifically. That's not going to affect you. The things that affect you are going to be the places where the color starts to change around the edges. Oh, you're UK based, so I don't know why MMV, but green here equals local shops are open. Yellow is businesses have closed up, and red is businesses are boarded up. Huh. I've only been to one where businesses were closed.
So on the East Coast of the US, I can tell you anecdotally, the police will artificially push businesses to do that red to heighten the fear.
That would not surprise me.
I have worked at restaurants that were right like along the path of a protest, and they'll be like, you guys should board up. We don't know what's going to happen. You guys should board your windows. And the protest will be 50 people chanting at a moderate volume. And it's like, it is at least on the East Coast, it's very common for them to be like, for your safety, just for your safety, you should really, one thing we were saying about like people near the protest that aren't involved, you will be surprised, young protesters, you will be surprised how many people are not counter protesters, are not affiliated with what you're doing, and they will just come out of a store and see what you're doing and just be mad. They're just mad. And it could be because they know what you're doing and they don't like it. Or it could just be they want the status quo to be upheld and they don't want disruption. And they have no strategy to going aggro, so they can sometimes really cause a problem.
Yes. We had somebody.
Because they're
Go ahead.
just angry. There's no thought.
Yeah,
Oh, I'm sorry.
no
Go ahead.
thoughts, just vibes. You are 100% correct. We had somebody try to run their car into one of our marches, and it was right at the very, very beginning. Like, I was sitting in the lead truck with my drum, so I have a view pointing back towards the crowd, and I just see the crowd start to part. People start to scream and move because a guy was trying to drive his car right through the march. And again, our security is top notch. And when I say ours, I'm talking about our area because we have
Your city,
Yeah.
your region, yeah.
I mean, I don't represent a specific organization. They managed to get the guy to pull to the side. They managed to force him to the side, and he got out of his car, pulled off his shirt, wrapped it around his fist, and then stomped around like a toddler having a tantrum, waiting for somebody to fight with, like waiting for somebody, like swearing and getting people's faces. And the security team is just like bored. Like, he did not register. He was so insignificant. Nobody fought with him. He did not think it out. He left his car door open. He left his car there to stomp around for, a good 2 or 3 minutes. The march moved on around him. Had not thought it
I'm
through.
100% locking that guy's keys in his car.
You know what? I wouldn't have seen it happen. And if it did, he went that way, officer. So
in relation to this, because this is a question I get a lot of people are worried about violence when they protest if they've never protested before.
Mm-hmm.
I have been to, and I'm not exaggerating, and I know this number is going to check out for you too, if not dozens, hundreds of protests in the last 30 years. The violence that happens is not nearly what they want it to be unless it's state sanctioned. But I will say this much, and this is important. Almost every time that I have been just punched in the face by someone at a protest, it was not a counter protester. It was one of those aggro people that came out of a store. One time I was protesting Israel, and we were going down the street, and a woman came out of a store and just started screaming at us. And I was like, time for me to tank. And I went right over there, and I didn't wear glasses at the time. I was a younger man, and she's just rage screaming. And I'm just letting her, like, I'm taking it. Because what are you going to do? Just keep screaming, baby. And she goes, and I just looked at her and I said, do you want to do that again? And to her credit, she went and did it again. I am not some Billy badass that can take 2 shots to the face and not move. This woman was 70 if she was a day. I was more concerned about her hurting herself than me. And she just, and I was like, if you want to do it again, go ahead. And there were like 10 people standing there filming. And I'm like, if it makes you feel better to punch me, I will do this as a courtesy. Go ahead. And she was so angry. And I've had, and strangely, it is often old white women because they know they can get away with some shit. I have had them throw stuff at me, spit at me, like hit me with their bag. It is always, the violence is done by people that aren't thinking. And yes, sometimes crazies do violence, like the guy who tried to run people over. But 99% of the time, they are just like, they're thinking long-term too. And they know if they get arrested, it hinders them. Like, and they get put on a database. But it is so often those people, which is why you need a de-escalator for those people. Like you were saying, like they start pulling someone in. If you can de-escalate, you need to go to that person marching and going, this old lady on the side of the road is not for us. Let's go this way. Like just, we got shit to do, and it's not this.
Yes. We have a focus. We have a point. We have something that we want attention paid to, and it is not this person. And it's important to remember that. So again, very nerdy thing, but human behavior breaks down into largely 4 functions. human beings do something because they want access to something. They want to escape from something, escape a demand. They want attention, or it's automatic, meaning it's internally motivated for no other reason. Like a sneeze is an automatic behavior. It has an internal stimulus that is not motivated by, escape, attention, or access. A fake sneeze is attention seeking. Okay. Fake sneezing because you're sick, I can't go to school. That's escape motivated. Okay. Trolling is attention seeking behavior. The best thing to do with trolls is take the wind out of their sails, make them feel invisible, make their rage impotent instead of something that gets a reaction out of you, because they're trying to disempower the movement by stealing attention from it, stealing seriousness from it, for example, taking away from the gravity of the situation with their stupidity. A lot of them are like just really goofy. Don't allow them that. Instead, steal their thunder. They're looking for it. Yeah. Oliver says that when he was in Spokane, Washington, there was a protest and the Proud Boys showed up and looted businesses. Oh yeah. Bad faith actors will 100%. Come in. 100%. Yeah.
100%. So one, if anyone makes this connection, when I took my shirt off and slapped my belly last week, yes, I was being a troll. 100% I was being a troll because I knew what it would do. But there was, where was it? Minneapolis? There was a protest where it was near like a Jiffy Lube, like a car parts store. And this guy just came through and came in and just was like, window smash, window smash, window smash. Nobody was doing it. And people ran up on him and filmed him and were like, what are you doing, bro? Who are you? And the guy instantly, when I actually saw it happen live streamed. And instantly in that moment, I was like, that is a cop. Because as soon as someone said, what are you doing? The way he went, get away from me. The cop stance and voice, I'm like, that's a cop. Yeah. And it took less than 24 hours for the guy's ex-fiance to say, I know who that is. He's a police officer in that town. I left him because he's abusive. Like every single thing you could possibly think to be like, oh yeah, this is the guy. And that's that is when you know someone is there to cause nonsense, when they're when their vibe and the vibe of what's going on don't match.
Yes. That's so wonderful to point out. Some people do not pass the vibe check. Some people will not be doing anything per se, but they'll be standing there radiating bad vibes like a Dementor or like a tiny angry black hole. And you can just kind of pick up in the way that they're glaring at the speaker, or they're not filming because they're like, oh my God, this is such a cool protest. They're filming because, some people will not pass the vibe check. You just stay away from them. They're just totally weird.
Also, when it comes to filming, if you're filming at a protest, I'm more for live streaming a protest than filming if you don't know what's up, because you're bringing attention to the situation. Yeah. But someone that is excited to be there and supports what's going on will do this.
Yes.
They're so happy. And they're like, I'm part of this thing. And the person that's recording your faces does this.
They're checking the shot.
They're checking the shot. They're framing. They're going face, 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 face. And the person that's happy to be there is like, look at all of us working together. It is when I tell you, it is a completely different shot. Here, dangerous. Here, safe. Because this person wants 10,000 people in the shot, and this person wants 50 individuals in a 3-minute video. And once you see that, it is. Now that I've said it, you will see it one time and you're like, there it is. That's what Nick was talking about. How do you find protests that you support?
So, one of my other roles in the community is I am a bit of a social hub, a hub being what connects spokes at the center of a wheel. when I attend a protest, I get in touch with the organizers and I invite them over to my house and I feed them. I know everybody thinks Muslims are terrorists. The only terror we inflict on the world is overfeeding people. It's what we specialize in. So,
I mean, you also give seconds when they're unrequested.
yeah. Well, I don't do that because boundaries, but I won't give it to you, but I will offer and I'll say, are you sure? And please take some home. And then I give you a box and then I will insist that you fill it. So don't compliment the food if you don't want to take it home. Just don't do it. So I connect organizers to organizers. I consider myself orgnostic. I am not part of any org. I support all orgs. Sometimes whether they invite me or not, because they don't know that I exist. I don't expect an invitation. So I have managed to create enough of a group so that I can connect that group to that group. And anytime a new organization emerges or is located or is found, their organizers are added to that signal group. And we have one meta signal group where the only rule is only drop upcoming events. No conversation, no politics, no benefits of socialism versus communism, because we've got the Freedom Road Socialists in there. We've got the Socialist Rifle Association. We've got, Communists of America. There's no one ideology that's in there. It's not possible. We also have the Young Democrats in there. Just
one of
post.
I'm sorry.
So that's how I find events. But the thing is that these communities, these signal groups, they don't exist without someone purposefully going out and creating them. And before that signal group was created, this conversation kept happening. How do we know what events are coming up? How do we know what events are coming up? Oh, I don't know. I followed their Instagram page, but I didn't see that post. I missed that event. There's a need for a centralized location of events for people. Reach out and make it yourself. No one's going to make it for you. Everyone else is waiting on someone else.
This is also one of the key things you can do to really boost a protest if you can't or don't feel safe going. Control it. Like we've all seen the superhero movies where the superhero's doing something and then there's the man in the chair just typing away. You can be that person. Side note, that person sometimes will be calling the people in the protests that have their phones saying, hey, Google traffic is crazy on 3rd Street. I bet the cops are coming down 3rd Street. These are all little,
yes.
I will say this every time someone asks, because getting access to the signal group is kind of some high level stuff for people people starting protests. One of the things you can absolutely do is, and this sounds so weird, and I keep saying it, your local soup kitchen has people there that know.
Yes.
Your local, when I say soup kitchen, the people that are feeding the poor, the people that are volunteering to feed the poor, those are 100% your local activists. You will find so much from talking to those people. Not to use the blue-haired liberal stereotype or the septum ring joke, but if you go to your local soup kitchen and there's someone going, good to see you again, Jimmy, and they have a septum ring, and you go, what Trump's doing is screwed up. Is there a protest this weekend? They're going to know. They are going to.
And that is such wonderful advice, because one thing that really is a good identifier of an organization that is worth its salt is what community work do they do. It's one thing to talk about, how important it is to have community, how important it is to do mutual aid, how important it is that, we fight capitalism. But if your activism is limited to just theory and you don't actually go out and feed people, and you don't actually go out and do something, you might not be finding the people who actually know what's on the ground. And we have an organization in DFW called Food Not Bombs, which, by the way, is a designated terrorist organization. No joke. They're illegal. They have to sneak around feeding people. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. But the core group of people in Food Not Bombs is almost like like one of those chocolate assortment boxes from every different org. And it's not planned deliberately that way. It's just that every single org comes together on serving the community and feeding people. And so if you want to meet organizers from a bunch of different places, 100% what Nick said, find the people that are feeding people, and you'll find the people doing the stuff.
Side note on this, if you listen to modern people, the answer is different. But if you read historical papers on why everyone hated the Black Panthers, it was not Black people in tactical gear with guns. It was community organizing. That's where they pissed off the powers that be, fighting food deserts and educating children. Because when you undermine the system, that's when you get results.
Oh yeah, and that it's kind of wild. And I'm just going to turn off my space heater because it's too warm in here. Give me 1 second. It was 85 degrees yesterday, and today it's 40. Yeehaw, Texas. I think it's easy for people to look at all the things that, you know, the the Musk administration is doing, you know, to, like, why would you shut down the Consumer Protection Bureau? Why would you close down the Department of Education? Like, why would you? All these things make no sense until you realize that the systems that serve people empower people. The systems that feed people feed into revolution. Because until your belly is full, what do you care about politics, right? Poverty and hunger and illness are the short leash that we as a society are kept on, as well as countries in the developing world. Read bombed to smithereens, homes of ancient civilizations bombed to smithereens by colonial powers. They are kept on that short leash, that dependency. They want us to be disempowered. And so, again, when Nick says the Black Panthers were dangerous because they were feeding people and providing education, food and education are an existential threat to control of people, of cultures, of communities, because that's starving to death is dangerous, and people cannot organize until they are safe enough to organize. You know, if you go back to like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, where your most immediate needs are safety and food and shelter, and then you can work on like moving up the levels to self-actualization and, you know, analysis and all the other things too. But yeah, the Black Panthers were amazing, and feeding people is super, 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 super where it's at.
I will tell you, I've never had a socially unarmed, like, arm of the state get as mad at me as one time we were feeding a group of people and the cops showed up and said, "You can't do this. You don't have a food truck license." And my buddy went, "I actually have a food truck license and we're working out of my food truck right now." And he went, "That doesn't matter because you don't have someone here with a food service license." And I went, "Actually, I have a food service license. I have one." And I'm like, what we are doing is completely legal because the law in Chicago does not say that food trucks need to sell the food. You're allowed to give it away. And when people on the street, like randos on the street, were furious because that's not how the system's supposed to work. And a lot of the system is upheld by white people that just don't want disruption. Like, they don't care about right, they don't care about wrong, they just care about quiet.
Yes, that is an unfortunate truth. I'm going to add a little asterisk to, you know, what you just said about white people upholding the system. We live in a white majority country, so yes, white people do the majority of upholding of the system. In other places where capitalism and colonialism, you know, repress their populations, the majority of the upholding is going to be done by the majority of the population. We have the brown majority in Pakistan. There'll be black majority in, you know, other countries where there's a high level of government corruption that, you know, starts at the top and goes all the way down to the bottom into the police, the way that it does in Pakistan. So I just want to say that I'm not offended when people take continual digs at white people, but I do like to point out that it's a function of math.
It's whoever is in charge in your current location. We're just talking to an American audience. Like, like if I were talking about a country that was 1% white, there would be a different group of people that I'd be going. But
and it would be really weird if 1% of the population was white and you were still blaming them for all of your problems and you still considered them an existential threat. Which, by the way, did you know that Muslims make up roughly 1% of the American population, and how terrifying we are that with 1% of the population, we're totally going to take over all forms of government? Isn't that terrifying? Aren't we amazing?
Look, you said it, not me. I'm not. Nobody's soundbiting me to get me canceled today. Not today.
She's never going to have me on again in her chat.
So Olivia said something about a food bank, and I actually want to say this because I think this is important as we're talking like protesting. Again, it's not just social justice warriors on the front line, and it's not just in the streets. I have a friend that works in a very red state, and their job is fundraising for a place that gives food to people in need. And they do their 37 and a half hours a week working at that place. And then they put all of the hours that they would put to protesting into additional free labor at their nonprofit to get more money to bring in more food. And I promise you that is more effective in protesting the powers that be than that person going to one protest a week for the rest of their lives, because they're enacting more positive change with that action. And a lot of times protesting is just helping your neighbors.
Yes, it is. And protesting effectively, or rather organizing effectively, means looking at where you are most effective. Could I show up at an art build? Yes. Should I be drumming? Probably. Could I hold a banner? Sure. They probably need me drumming. When I recognize that where I am needed involves noise, that allows me to focus my efforts on noise. I make noise. That's literally my job. And there are people that can't make noise. And then there are people that can't hold banners. And then there are people who can't show up protest because they're raising children. And, having kids myself, I have this conversation with other moms who, are frustrated that they can't take their kids to protests. And, they get kind of down on themselves like, oh my God, there's all these things going on and I feel totally useless. I feel like I'm not helping. And I'm like, listen, some people contribute to the revolution. You are making revolutionaries. Raising revolutionary children is an act of revolution in and of itself. You are literally creating and growing the movement. So whatever it is that is the most effective use of your time and your skills, don't downplay it. Don't. And again, I love the food bank example so much because a lot of people, we're all flawed. A lot of people tend to maybe see protesting as, their opportunity to take a swipe at the man, or, finally vent some of that frustration, or get out there and finally punch a Nazi, all these fun things, or the social media videos, or feeling included, or finally getting to lead something, or I get to chant. Like, they think about this in ways that I'm not going to call self-aggrandizing, but I am going to call self-serving. Activism has to be the opposite of self-serving. It must be for the service of the community. And so showing up at a food bank where no one gives you a megaphone, no one is going to shake your hand or take your picture or tag you on Instagram, and doing it for the community is a good way to develop your altruism chops, which are really important to maintaining humility as a person and as an activist. Because I don't know if you ever talk about this, but all organizations attract narcissists. All of them.
Every group has someone that wants to be a main character.
Yeah. Yes, main character energy. And it's like, I see movements and organizations the way that I see a ship. It's a group moving towards a destination. Every ship collects barnacles, and the organization's job is to pick off the barnacles and keep going. And removing the barnacles never hurts the ship. It only hurts the barnacles. And when you think about this, that when somebody is problematic in your organization, you're like, oh, I know, but like, I don't want to be rude to him. I'm like, he's a barnacle. He's slowing us down. We don't need it. Move on.
I want to add a quick one thing to something you said, and then I want to bring up something else that popped into my brain. So when you were talking about having kids, remember how I said they're, like, to the audience, I know you remember how I said there are social justice warriors and social justice bards? There are social justice babysitters.
Yes. Oh my God. Yes.
Like, there are social justice babysitters, because if I had a kid and I was going to the protest, somebody's got to watch my kid. And if you think that's not protesting, you are out of your minds, because one, you're getting another body at the protest, and two, you are teaching the kid that you are babysitting how important protesting is.
Childcare is part of the revolution. Childcare is part of the revolution. And that is so important.
Another example I want to give in different roles, and I'm always vague about this person because they're very private, but I always give them the fucking respect they deserve. Excuse my language. When Israel started things really rough in the beginning of October last year, the year before now.
Yes.
It again. Sorry. Lots of jobs were coming down on their staff really hard for speaking out. I'm self-employed. I can do what I want. I do have a remote job that I work for another company doing some stuff, but if I lost that job, I would functionally be fine. So I started making a ton of content in a space where a lot of people were not prepared to make content. And when I was making that content, I had to be looking at the horrible things that were happening that nobody should have to see.
Yeah. One
of my very good friends, her job during the first couple months of this genocide was, and she does have degrees in this, was being my freaking mental health support and therapist. Like, she would call me and be like, I saw you posted 7 videos today. How are you holding up? And I'll be like, not good, not holding up very good right now. But she had a job where she couldn't publicly resist because she has responsibilities and people that depend on her financially, and she couldn't risk getting fired. And I'm not tooting my horn when I say this. I am tooting hers. I could not have made that content if I couldn't call someone and be like, I saw the most horrific thing today and I'm crying and I keep trying to record a video about it and I keep crying and then I can't talk in the video because I'm crying. And she's like, all right, let's talk through it. Let's break it into pieces. Like that. She made that content as much as I did, if not more so. And that is another thing that, like, you can absolutely be doing. And again, like, it doesn't seem like resistance. It doesn't seem like protesting. It absolutely is. You know, like, supply lines are important to the frontline soldiers. Like, it's
people who cook, people who bring snacks, people who feed people. My percussion section is overwhelmingly financially paid for by my ex-husband. Never a good husband, but never a bad man. He worked one of those jobs where he would be fired, and he did not protest very much. He did not show up. He did not make any social media posts, but he bought nearly every drum that's in that kit put the gas in the car to get people places, sponsored other people to go protest. He's like, I can't do this. I will get fired. We need health insurance, but I will support other people in doing this.
Social justice banker or financier is also
Oh, we need
important.
so many of those. Oh my God. Nick, I tell you, I hate capitalism so much because what I want to do is what I'm doing now, which is talking to you about activism, which is collecting knowledge and then sharing it. What I want to do is freaking protest and then go train drummers and then bring up the drums of war, the armies of noise that the revolution needs. What I have to do is gig work to keep the lights on. Where are the sugar daddies of the revolution? Can you just pay me a salary so I can go revoluting full time? Don't downplay money.
There used to be this older man that would go to protests in Chicago. And you know those like foldable shopping carts that our senior citizens walk to the grocery store with like the two big wheels in the back and the one in front?
Yeah.
He would wheel one of those into the protest, and all it had in it were individual packs of Kleenex, individual packs of Oreo cookies, and those tiny little 5-ounce water bottles.
I love it.
And he would wheel in and he'd distribute them, and he would talk to people, and he was an old man, and he would talk to people and he would give them support. And I cannot tell you how many protests I was at as a young, vital man. And I'd be like, we're going to get these guys. And I'd see the old man. I'm like, oh, he's here. Like, he's here. He's never going to chant. He's never going to hold a sign. He's never going to yell. He's never going to flip. He's just going to. And another friend of mine, he used to sit outside of the protest with he had like an adult tricycle that had like a basket on the front and 2 seats on it. He would ride in with a case of water, and then he'd ride someone out that needed to come out. And then he'd ride in with a case of water, and then he'd ride someone out. And then he'd ride in with a box of those little mini potato chips or cookies or variety packs or whatever. And then he'd ride out. He spent the entire day just riding this goofy bike with lights on it in and out of the protest. And people would be like, what is he? He's the supply line. He's the supply line.
Yeah. You know, one of my favorite comrades, I adore her so much. All she does when we're at a protest is she shadows me, and she carries water, and she magically appears with water for myself or the other people that are ahead of the banner who have our hands full of drums or a megaphone or are marshaling the march. She just goes in and out giving people water. I tell you, like, if she's not there, it's so miserable and so difficult.
It is so key, and water's so heavy. It's so heavy.
It's so heavy.
Like people don't realize, and like all of these things, and I think some people, when I set this up, might have thought like Intro to Protesting was just going to be like how to be a social justice warrior 101.
This is social justice warrioring.
Right. But you may not be the warrior. You may be the water carrier or the freaking, like, you might be carrying the bag, and that nobody in front of you can do shit without the bag. Like, it is so layered.
When
I'm trying to think of other things I've seen people do.
I can tell you, the people in
Absolutely.
Austin, when we went down for our last very big march in the summer, when it was about 105 degrees, and the police were not letting us march. We stood there in the sun, ready to march for over 40 minutes without being allowed to march in the sun, all of us in this massive block of people, like kettling light. There were people that came with coolers of ice on wheels, multiple, and all they did was pass out cold water. And when they were out of water, they marched ahead of the banners, ahead of us. Like, so there's the banners, there's the marshals, there's the drummers, and then there's the chanters, right? That's kind of like the spearhead of the front of a march. They marched ahead of us with their cooler full of ice, even though there was no more water left to pass out. So we could grab fistfuls of ice and shove it in our shirts and in our pockets and under my scarf, because that was the closest I have ever come to having heat stroke. I nearly passed out so many times, and the Austin State Capitol is so freaking huge. And we went all the way around it. At one point, I stopped them and I took my entire head and I shoved it into the cooler. Like, those people were a godsend, and all they did was bring a cooler of ice. The whole front of the march was sustained on that.
You know, since you are a drummer, to the audience, you know those whistles you can get at like any Guitar Center where they're like, ooh, ooh. They're light. They don't weigh anything. But if you're going to the protest with a group of friends and you all have those, and someone starts saying stuff you don't want them saying, it works. I have seen that multiple times where someone's like, let me tell you why World War II Germany had it right.
Yes.
And sometimes that's all it takes.
Because that's
Like,
the vicious mockery. That's casting vicious every time I know I keep saying that I was just having this conversation, but I was just having this conversation. And we were talking about my friend Thomas. He's in the car right now. His name is Thomas the Train Horn Intifada. I own a dual barrel train horn that's mounted to a Ryobi cordless drill. Like, it's a literal train horn. It is ear-shatteringly loud.
I've used them on job sites to let everyone on the job site know that it's time
there
for
you
lunch.
Go. There you
home.
go. So I own one of those, and we were talking about using it on some of our counter protesters, because here in DFW in Dallas, we're a very red state. We have like influencers whose job it is, like, they'll make content making fun of us. Like, they come up to use us for a photo op. We know them by face, we know them by name. They're just there to get clips. So we were talking about, like, okay, how do we make their clips unusable? Like, how do we make it so that they can't keep using us for photo ops and content on their website? I'm like, well, I could give you guys Thomas, but there's only one of him. But whistles, even just the ones that you can buy like 50 of them for $12 in a pack, and they're on a lanyard, and they're plastic, and they're green and pink. A handful of those make video footage entirely unusable. They are so easy to pass around in a crowd, much cheaper than the whistles from Guitar Center. Those whistles are wonderful.
Oh, by the way, side note to the audience, if you know someone is making the money making fun of the protesters on YouTube, a group of people just screaming obscenities, or even better, because YouTube will demonetize it if you use the bad enough obscenities.
I didn't know that.
Take your phone, play a Disney song, and put it as close to their head as you legally can in that area without it being considered assault. Because if someone is saying racist crap over Moana's soundtrack, Disney will have that video
even
removed.
if no one is saying stuff over that soundtrack. The content infringement, Disney's content infringement on
they're no joke. Do not mess with the mouse. We used to have someone that would come and like record videos, and just like they would say stuff while they were recording, hoping that someone would like Rich Spector them. And I was like, we knew it was bait, but it was still infuriating. And then this one dude, he brought like a battery operated speaker, and the guy started recording, and he just would blast Under the Sea. And I'm like, what are you doing? He's like, Disney will have his videos demonetized. He's doing this to make money. So I just need to stop him from making money, because he won't post it if it's not profitable.
Absolutely brilliant. That's brilliant. We were at the JNF conference. The Jewish National Fund is the greenwashing arm of the occupation. They're one of the oldest Zionist charities. Directly, they plant pine trees over ethnically cleansed villages. That's their greenwashing. So they brought their global conference to Dallas in November of this year. And so naturally, we hung out outside of their hotel all night long and played them lots of music all at once, all night at high volumes, right? One nice lady decided to come out, and she had obviously had a lot to drink. And I'm going to have to say that I think she must have been a theater kid, because she could dance, and I was very happy for her. And she was remarkably coordinated despite being a bit inebriated. She was like trying to make fun of us. Like she's like dancing along to our chants and like twerking along with it. And one of the people who was with us had come with a light projector, and he just pulled up the clown face emoji and just followed her everywhere with the clown face emoji and uploaded that video with the do 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 do. That got rid of her so fast.
Bet you she won't do that again.
It was beautiful.
Like,
yeah.
And I know this stuff sounds weird if you're watching or listening, but a lot of this is a psyop. It's psychological.
100%. It's all a psyop. Trolling is a psyop. Counter trolling is a psyop. It's crazy to think that, I'm sure once upon a time, psyops and COINTELPRO had to be way more complicated. And in this day and age, it's literally yelling at people and copyright infringement and emojis and twerking. It's.
I went to protest the Unite the White rally in DC, and a guy that was way bigger than me, who I'm very confident was armed and would have really hurt me, went, like, I was arguing with him. He goes, I could just stomp the shit out of you. And I'm like, and I'd have my ass kicked and you'd still be wrong. And he looked at me and I'm like, and if sometimes, and I was like, look, dude, sometimes you got to take an ass whooping. And he was like, and he just left because like he thought I was gonna be like, and I was like, I might get my ass kicked, but you'll still be wrong. Like,
laughter is wonderful. Even if they're laughing at you, when things don't follow the script, people have an idea in their mind of how things are going to go. Like we mentally plan out scenarios. We're like, oh, I'm going to get in his face. He's going to get in my face, and then he's going to shove me, and I'm going to shove him back, and then I'm going to kick his rear end. Like, they have an idea of how it's supposed to go. And when you break character or you break script, this, like, it literally doesn't compute. They don't have a backup plan because you're not doing what you're supposed to do.
They have amped themselves up into a pathway that you have just rejected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're not being compliant. And again, that's why humor is wonderful. I remember when I was, again, heading to one of those protests in Austin, which we're at a lot, I was crossing the street with my drum, and somebody took the time to stop the car and put down the window and yell out the passenger side, "Hey, lady, F you." Obviously, he didn't abbreviate it. And I said, "Thank you. You too, sir." And he's like, "What?" And I'm just like, just go on my way.
Oh, responding. There's actually a viral video right now that you should look up. This football player is running, high-fiving people, and one of his opponents has his arm over the rail, flipping him off. And he gets to the guy and he stops and goes in the air and then just keeps high-fiving. And you can see the guy giving the middle finger. It's just like, because he was doing it to get a reaction, but he didn't get the reaction.
Well, that didn't go according to plan.
One of my friends that is a protester is a very, very tall, conventionally attractive woman, which draws her an extra set of bullshit when she protests. And a guy yelled at her out of a car one time, and she said, "I don't want no scrubs." And he went, "What?" And she started singing, "I don't want no scrubs," about him being out the side of his best friend's ride at him. Completely took the wind out of his sails. And I was like, only you could do that. And she was like, "Well, you would have mooned him." And I'm like, yes.
that would have done something for him. That's for sure.
I'm like, only you could have done that. And she's like, "Oh, but it's what worked, Like, there's I'm gonna plug a friend of mine who makes pretty decent content on TikTok. Her name's Jen Capra. She's also on YouTube. She used to work on Sesame Street. She does this wonderful series about the resistance of joy. Ooh. And how having joy at protests, like having a little dance party, like playing like a very major chord, poppy, like silly radio song and everyone dancing really bothers people. And it does.
It does. And that's actually important, not just the pop music, but the movement and dance. And when you think about Debka, we see all of this amazing line dancing happening at these anti-mass deportation protests, like by the Mexican community. And I'm amazed that like 200 people have memorized this dance step because I'm Pakistani and we don't do that. But it's amazing. And this is important because some of the psychological steps that have to do with dehumanization involve painting whoever it is that you're dehumanizing as being lesser than. So it's not, they have to be ugly. They're less intelligent. They're less hardworking. They're less energetic as well. Like they're just, they're just mid all around. And so when people dance in defiance of oppression, it pisses them off because you are functionally demonstrating we're not mid, we're awesome, and you wish you were with us too. And I love it when I get enough drummers with me. When we get, sometimes the chanters take a break and we just get to drum and we get to have like a jam session. The cops don't want to, and they don't know it sometimes. They're moving their heads. They're tapping their toes. They're like tapping their fingers. When we were in DC outside of Netanyahu's hotel, when he was at the Watergate, the time before the last, very little chanting, lots of noise. There was one cop who was so mad at himself. They had a line of bicycles in front of us. So I was hanging out with him for like 3 hours, the same guy, where he would just like zone out and be like, and then he'd like catch himself and he'd be like, and then he'd zone out. And then he start moving along. It's wonderful.
So you know how you said you have to find out like figure out what your best spot is. You bringing up Netanyahu. So people are protesting Netanyahu in DC this weekend, and I had to make a choice. Am I going to do this live stream on Sunday and make it the best I can, or am I going to go protest and do my live stream halfway? And I was like, I really want to protest there. I want to be there. I want to flip him the bird. I want to scream and hope he hears me telling him what I think of him. But that's not where my efforts were best used. My efforts are best used in making this recording. So when people go, how do I attend protests? I can go, I have a 2-hour YouTube for you that will teach you everything you need to know. Like that's like, and again, like it's not as cool as being at the protest in DC, but it's, sometimes you gotta, if you're not centering yourself, it's not about how cool the thing you're doing is, it's about how cool the results are.
Yes. And that's something that I don't know is going to be relevant to, if people are watching this because they're thinking about protesting for the first time, but this is something that's very relevant for people who are publicly involved in movements. The constant vigilance that you must have to make sure that you are not centering yourself, that must be continually maintained. You must continually look out for, there's those sneaking signs of self-aggrandization, because there's a very delicate balance between, am I making this video because I look amazing waving this flag, or I'm making this video because this flag needs to be waved. The video looks the same from the outside, but you know the difference. So really important to do the effective things, even if they're not the satisfying ones.
It is. And also what you're most good at changes over time. And that, like, you need to be aware of that too. I used to be really good at going to the front line and being aggro. And as I've gotten older and as I gained a platform, am I needed at the front line being aggro, or am I needed, like, where am I going to make the biggest effect? And hold on. Do you need to go out, bud? I will never wind up like going viral on the internet for making this YouTube video. I will never wind up, like, I just won't. But I very well might help someone who does go to the front lines and do that thing. And that's like, it's so important.
Yeah.
Wow. That really messed with my light. I'm
That's
sorry.
okay. Oliver says, also people like us don't put physical beauty on top of our priority list. Then they do, and they call us ugly, and it's something that they think that will hurt us. Now, Oliver, you make complete sense because they're coming from an entirely external, appearance-based, popularity reinforced, strength in numbers, beauty is good and good is beauty worldview.
Have any of you been watching the, like, this is how Republican women do their makeup critiques online that are going off? Are you seeing these? They're brilliant. And because the right puts so much stock in being beautiful in a specific way, because they all have the same lip shade and the same dye job and the same, like, and people making fun of the thing that's very important to them is really, really interesting. And I follow a couple people that are making really good content doing that. And then other people go, yeah, well, what about your Democrat makeup? And they're like, we don't actually have a Democrat makeup. Like, we don't care. Like, yeah, we don't care.
I love that about a lot of content that I watch that is leftist or, you know, pro-Palestine. And I'm going to use leftist in quotation marks just because it's not very clearly defined. It's just somebody who's given up on both political parties. People are in their pajamas without makeup on, looking like they just rolled out of bed, and they don't care. I don't care. I'm there for the message. I'm not there for the celebrity. They're also not there for the celebrity factor because they look like crap, and I love it. It's awesome.
I had someone come into my live one night on TikTok, and I was doing good that night. It was one of my best, and I had like 200, like upper 200s, lower 300s, depending on the evening. My mod Christian, who's in here, was in there because his existence in my lives boosts my lives. I don't know how that works, but anyway, somebody came in and was like, "You're fat and ugly," and I was like, "Okay," and he was like, I just wanted you to know you're fat and ugly. And I'm like, I have a hot wife. I don't care if you think I'm fat and ugly. My hot wife doesn't think I'm fat and ugly. I'm like, I have 60,000 women that follow me on this app. So clearly I'm not so ugly they won't listen to what I have to say. And he just left the live. Like, as soon as I was like, I don't care. Owen, can you not do that right now, please? Drop. Thank you.
It amazes me how much they think that their disapproval is going to hurt us. It's like, oh no, people whose opinion I obviously don't respect don't think very highly of me. I'm shattered. My entire worldview has changed. Oh no.
If I'm not taking your advice, I'm not taking your criticism.
That's brilliantly put. I like that. I like that a lot. Also, they simply do not have a qualified opinion on human nature and humanity in general. And that's quite obvious. They're not good judges of character or people all around. So it's a very unqualified opinion, in my unqualified opinion.
You know, like all sciences like give to each other because a scientific fact is a scientific fact. So one of the things that I bring up a lot, and I bring this up a lot in leftist spaces, is so obviously I work with animals, so my brain sees that a lot. There's this thing in animals called aposematism. Dart frogs have it. You see a dart frog, you know that it's poisonous. So predators don't go after it. And when dudes say, oh, look at that blue-haired liberal, she's never going to get a man like that, that's aposematism working.
Yes.
Because her bright coloration is telling you, the dangerous man, stay away from her. And like, and it's not just the blue hair. It could be the blue hair. It could be the freaking kufiya. It could be the anti-racism shirt. It could be your freaking headscarf. Like
your tattoos.
You are, yeah. Like there's so like, and when they start making fun of looks, like I always tell them, like, it's working. If you're watching this and you are an older white dude, my line is always, you put out the right type of bait to catch the right type of fish. You're not my type of fish, buddy. Like, You're not what I'm looking to catch.
Yeah, it's, for the most part, I'm not really greatly influenced by whether or not Republicans find me attractive or approve of my fashion choices. It's not something that keeps me up at night, and it's not something that will change my worldview.
But as a woman in America, if you don't have the validation from men, where do you get your self-worth?
I don't know. Help! You just shattered my whole life. Well, there is something in psychology called the internal locus of control. we do maintain and set our own internal validation. Thanks, Lana. I'm internally validated. Thank you. I'm good. And what's very funny is like, I actually, in the past 2 years or so, I actually lost about 100 pounds. I got very, very sick when I got COVID. My gallbladder tried to kill me. And so I went from being called fat and ugly to, wow, you'd be much hotter if you weren't wearing a scarf, as, the other tail end of that compliment. And it's amazing to me that it doesn't matter what size I was. It didn't matter whether they found me attractive or not. They would still find something nasty to say. Either I'm too ugly or I'm not attractive enough, but they disapprove either way. It's almost like it's not about me and it's entirely about them.
Absolutely.
People are wild, but it's very cute that they think their opinion matters. Everybody needs to think that they're important in some way.
I want you to know, when they start doing that, if you look at them in the face and go, and I always do it as an apology, I go, I'm sorry. I don't take criticism from someone I wouldn't take advice from, because it's so polite, but it's absolutely a verbal neg to them. Oh, it's just
I need to write that down, actually, because that's a really good line. I'm writing.
And I just frame it as like I do it the same way. Like, when you're walking through the mall and the center kiosk person's like, stop here for a minute. You're like, no, thank you. I do it the same way. Like, I'm terribly sorry. I don't take critiques from people I wouldn't take advice from. And I just keep it moving. And they're like, what just happened?
Let me write this down before I forget. I have ADHD. I don't take critique from people I wouldn't take advice from. There. I will practice that one. And when the next time I use that line, I will think of you. There you go.
I feel like we kind of hit a natural end to this. Do you have something you want to add other than the plug for your stuff I'm going to make you give?
I'm going to say that if you attend a protest that doesn't have a lot of people at it and feels like a bit of a letdown, bear in mind that your presence there was massively important, and do not see it as a failure, but see it as being a critical success, because had you not been there, that protest would have lost 10% of its attendees. Small protests are sometimes the most beautiful acts of resistance, and don't fall into the idea that just because your action wasn't popular, that there's something wrong or that you need to change.
To add to this, I will tell you that this is something I've been doing for about 10 years. If there are 2 protests and I know it, I'm going to the smaller one every time. Because if I know there's going to be 60,000 people in DC, or there could be 60,000 in one, or there's going to be 30 people in Annapolis, Maryland at the Maryland Capitol, or there can be 32, like, the percentage gain is so much more important, and it is vital. It is absolutely vital.
I will always go where there are less drummers. I will always go where I know that they are not well supported, because it's simply the right thing to do. It doesn't matter what the photos look like. And, having been to a lot of protests and, being on the lead truck most of the time, there's a lot of photos of me. Some of them are amazing. Some of them professionally taken. It's not about the photos. It's about where is it most effective. And I will not miss the opportunity to plug what I do. because what I do takes money, unfortunately. But actually, don't give me any money. I have enough. I have enough drums. What I need is more people to go buy their own damn drum and then look up a YouTube video and learn one beat, just one. Because if you're like, oh my God, I'm so glad there's drums here. Otherwise, it would have been lame without the noise. You're right. And you need roughly 1 hour of training to be able to go. You don't have to be going. Da, 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 da. Just keep the pace. Just keep the pace. That's all you got to do. Don't demean your importance. Buy a drum. There. Buy Zeba. The end.
I'm going to respond to what Oliver said. Can you type at least your TikTok handle in the chat so everyone can grab it?
Where do I put the chat? Hold on.
It should be on the lower right of your screen. I can do it for you if you're struggling. No worries. I got it. Always told me that I got it. It's totally fine. So Oliver, I don't want to discredit the compliment, but here's the thing. Are we doing something that should be looked up to? I don't think so. As weird as that sounds.
Not weird.
Like we are doing what is right, and doing what is right is what you're supposed to do, if that makes sense. Like we're just further along in the experience. I am further down the road. And when I was a baby protester, there were people in these seats. There was no internet then, but there were people in these seats going, come here, you moron. You're going to get yourself arrested. That's not helpful today. Like there, and when you all have been doing this for 20 years, whatever platforms exist then, maybe the Elon Musk brain chip, you're going to be resisting going, come with us, you little morons, before you get convicted of thought crime. Like it's.
I agree, because if you put us on a podium or a pedestal, that implies that that's not a space that everyone can occupy. That's a small space. This isn't a pedestal. This is just a step that a lot of other people can take, and it is going to progress with time. So I want you guys to meet us where we are. Inshallah.
It is. Not everyone can do what I do. Not everyone can do what you do, but everyone can be equally as effective in what they can do. Again, even so, keep that. And Oliver, it's okay that you're the little moron, because I was the little moron. Everyone is. Like, experience is the thing that you get right after you needed it. Like, experience, you only get experience 2 seconds after it would have been really nice to have it. So just do the thing, go to the event, follow the lead, or if going to the event's not your thing, again, community organize and go where you're good. And it is so rewarding, and nothing is going to make you happy. And yes, like I've had pictures of me go viral. I've had video of me yelling at someone go viral on the wrong side of the internet, and you would have thought I was public enemy number one. And God, that felt good. It was a little dangerous, but it felt really good that I was making them really mad. But nothing feels as good as when you have that one-on-one interaction with the person that needs help, and you're like, I am right here. I don't need to go viral for that. Like, come on, little one. The police are coming here. Let me guide you to safety. That community aid portion is the most rewarding part.
Can I very briefly tell you the most rewarding thing that's ever come out of protesting for me?
Of course you can.
I was sitting in a doctor's office, and again, I live in Texas, and there was a little lady with her big poofy bouffant of white hair, and her red lipstick and her caked on foundation, the little Southern belle that's now 75, okay, talking to herself in the waiting room. I wish I could see the news, hoping to make conversation. I'm like, oh, okay, because they're playing something else. She's like, I need to see what's happening in Palestine. I'm like, what's happening in Palestine? She's like, yes, ma'am, it's terrible. And I was like, you're following the news on Palestine. She's like, oh, yes, I was having coffee downtown and I was just minding my business. And then I looked out the window and then there's people with these signs and these banners and they were yelling and beating on drums. And I said, what is all that? So I looked it up on the internet. It's terrible what they're doing over there, darling. And I was like, I was on that drum. This little old white poofy bouffant southern haired lady saw a protest, looked it up on the internet, and completely flipped sides.
Very, very few people are going to change the world on a grand scale. Everyone can change the world one person at a time.
Yes. And that is the biggest victory I have ever had out of protesting.
That is wonderful. I'm going to do a shameless plug, by the way, because if you all stick around to watch an ad that we're going to run in a second, it will actually help. You can also subscribe through Prime, which gives you free subscriptions, so you don't have to pay for them, and that also helps. And like I said, I use the money I use from live streaming for charitable donations, so you're not necessarily paying me, you're paying some sort of charity. I would love to do this with you again if you and I come up with a different topic and the timing allows. Like this was super rewarding, and I think
my pleasure. I've enjoyed it tremendously, and I'm very grateful that you gave me the opportunity to be here. I will watch the ad too. Watching ads is activism, okay?
When you know where the money's going, yes it can be.
It is.
Thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for taking your time out of the weekend to be my guest.
My absolute pleasure. Do you drop me or do I drop myself?
I'm gonna end the stream, and then my mod is going to run the ad if I'm correct on that. But yeah, so I'm the least tech savvy person there is. So if you have Amazon, you get a free subscription to one Twitch streamer a month that you can give away or you can use. So you don't have to spend any money for that. Like I'm asking for support, but I'm not asking for money.
I did not know that. That's so cool. Apparently, you're not the least tech savvy person because that's new information to me.
Perfect. Vi, one of my other mods showed up, but we are just wrapping up right now. Vi, I'm so sorry. I hope you had a good night at work tonight. So Christian says I got to wrap things up, and then he'll run the ad. So I'm gonna end the stream, and he's gonna run the ad. Thank you so much, everyone. I'll see you soon.
Free Palestine.
Bye.